Hello again! Welcome back to our journey where we are going through Lore Rekindled and comparing it to Lore Olympus. If you haven't seen the previous videos of this series, I encourage you to check them out. They are on my channel. And without further ado, let's continue our story. The plot takes us back to Cory. She's entering university, and as she is trying to forget her night with Hades, her eyes lay on him once again as she is entering the building. He is the sponsor of the building, he founded it, so he is hanging there, up in the air, straight in her face, and she has the most hilarious reaction. She's like, come on, give me a break. Not only is he in her head, now he's in her face as well. And we shift to her just walking around the corridor. I have checked Lore Olympus's take on this whole university thing, and we basically enter the university with Cory once the article about her and Hades is out, so her first interaction with the students are them gossiping about her, and the story doesn't pay much attention to the fact that she's portrayed to be this heiress, right? She's the Barley Mother mascot, and she is known to have quite a celebrity status. Despite that fact, the photographer doesn't seem to recognize her in both of the stories at first. When we meet Persephone, she's portrayed to be this heiress to Demeter's fortune and the mascot of Barley Mother. So one would think that she would be more recognized, and it virtually has no consequences in Lore Olympus. In here, we have the consequences. We see her wandering around the corridors at her school, and she's being recognized by people, but not from the scandal involving Hades, not yet, at least, but about her striking resemblance to Barley Mother mascot, which isn't a coincidence, of course, because she is the Barley Mother mascot. And people do notice, they are staring at her. She's trying to convince herself it's otherwise, but it's clear they are there, they are watching. Amongst them, there's a character that in Lore Rekindled is actually a blend of two characters that originally appeared in Lore Olympus. One of them was the photographer that took Persephone's picture. It was a paparazzi who sneaked up on Hades and Persephone and took the picture while they were leaving Hades' mansion, causing a mayhem and speculations. And his brother, who was actually attending Persephone's school. In here, those two characters were kind of merged into one, which I very, very much like, because those two characters, original ones, were only used as a plot device. They weren't developed in any sort of meaningful way. In Lore Olympus, the photographer, he is used as the story to, on one hand, portray the vengeful Dark Lord persona of Hades, and on the other hand, he is there to portray the merciful cinnamon roll persona of Persephone. But there was no other meaningful role that this character played. He disappeared as soon as the eye was returned, and we never seen him again. And the other character, Paparazzo's brother, was essentially used for one to portray that Persephone is struggling at university, as he was gossiping about her, first being involved in a scandal, and secondly he was basically bad-mouthing her because he found out that his brother was attacked by Hades and blamed it on Persephone. Then we randomly encounter him again years later, only to display how awesome Persephone became and how she learned to squash her whatever, like, as she's essentially telling him that, oh, you were the one that were talking about me years ago, and like, look at me now, whatever, this kind of a thing, to display her, I guess, character growth that we seriously liked. And the scene was so out of place, like, I don't know even what to say. It was just very random. In here, these two characters are made into one, and the character is Alex, and he actually establishes a relationship with Persephone. We're not going to get too much into the relationship in this video just yet. I'm saving it for another one, because we are trying to talk about the plot as it progresses chronologically. However, he essentially is given a way bigger role in this rendition. And I really like it because it, on one hand, justifies how much Persephone cares about him, and it brings so much more drama to the story. But let's not jump ahead. In here, he's just only spotting her, and he's all like noticing that she is the goddess, right? The goddess from the picture. And we get a bit of flashback from his perspective as he was selling the photo. I think it was a really cool addition because we have very funny headlines in the background, like Minotaur married to... I understand that it's a cow. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like a cow. And on the other one, we get a scorned queen, an article about Hera and Zeus's relationship. We see mascara running down her eyes. And this is sort of like the original Hera that we got introduced to in Lore Olympus. So yeah, we are here for scorned Hera. She had this aura about her, you know what I mean? And we see that there is a trade being made, and you know, the picture is sold off. And the guy is all like, oh my god, now I'm gonna be seriously in trouble because she is associated with Hades. So we see that, like in Lore Olympus, in here nymphs are sort of like a different social class than gods. A lot of people weren't a fan of it. It said that it could have some sort of like problematic undertones, I guess. But I personally didn't really feel that way about the original story. I mean, at least about this aspect of the original story. Of course, like the comments about like nymph trash and all of this were like, okay, so we are supposed to perceive Hera as this sympathetic character when she's like a bit of an a-hole. However, I feel like the whole structure makes sense because these are gods. They're sort of like above any other being. These gods are the creators of sometimes other gods, but also they're creators of all of the humanity and all of these magical creatures, dryads and nymphs and everyone. So they have this higher role they are serving, and for that role, I guess, they are elevated above all of the other society. And these gods are treated as royalty, right? So we know how monarchy works, right? So it never really irked me that much, and I think it actually creates an interesting narrative about like different status of different beings in this fictional world. So in here we see that Alex, the future friend of Persephone, is really petrified with the fact that he in a way caused harm to one of these sort of celebrity status goddesses. And he's really scared for his well-being, especially when it comes to her association with Hades, which is of course the Dark Lords. So he's a bit of a threatening presence, I guess. And she turns around and waves to him, and she has all the good intentions. She just thinks like, oh yeah, he's just staring, so I'm gonna say hi. And he has the very hilarious reaction when he's like, oh god, she knows. She's gonna drown me in the sticks for sure. Like, he's absolutely petrified. He thinks that she's toying with him and she's gonna punish him in some sort of horrible way. We then switch to Hecate. She is doing her speech to the employees as she did in the Lore Olympus, where she announces Hades being late, and she sets up a tone that Hades is this, you know, very demanding boss, and she's his right hand, and she's all like, don't think you're all off the hook, as in the original, you have to like give 100% and be productive and so on. And we see Hades having a conversation with Minthe, where she talks about his plans during the day because she's his PA as in the original. And she inquires about the code that in here serves a bigger narrative purpose. I guess you could argue that in the original it also served kind of like a bigger purpose because it connected like the beginning of the story where the code was given to the ending of the story where Persephone was wearing the code during her, I guess, final battles and things like that. And then I found out that there's like an extra story regarding Hera, like, you know, touching the code while it was given to her and seeing that it wasn't actually meant for her, it was meant for some other girl that is gonna be Hades' wife, and she decides to not accept the gift. But I much prefer this version because it sets up a conflict between Hades and Minthe. When she asks about the code, he just tells her he got rid of it, so she's all like, okay, I guess that's fair, because she doesn't want to, you know, stir the drama further, because she knows that she's kind of on the losing side. And she only quietly adds that, yeah, that was a limited edition. So she's like, well, got it. And this tiny little detail really underscores the fact that once she finally sees the infamous photo of Hades and Persephone taken by the paparazzo, she's 100% convinced that this is the one. That's the code that he was meant to give to me, and now some other chick is wearing it. So it adds to the drama. Anyways, as smooth as she is, she swiftly moves from the subject of the code to the subject of her rent. We see that Hades, like in Lore Olympus, is covering her rent, so, you know, as a god of wealth, I guess. So she's kind of like, you know, living off his money a bit. And then Hecate enters the scene, and she's telling of Hades and basically hinting that he drinks just as he did in the original. And she's all like, oh, I did the work for you. And he's, I understand, bribing her with some chocolates and flowers and leaves the elevator. We are back to Persephone as she's pulling out her notes and she's walking the corridors in school and people are still staring at her. And she's all like, oh my God, like I shouldn't be even surprised. Like, you know, my face is on every cereal package in Olympus. And eventually some people start a conversation with her asking whether she is or she is not a Barley Mother mascot, which she confirms, and they are jumping on her. They're asking all these questions like, you know, about her commercials, what is she doing wasting time in here, and like some other stuff. One of the girls asks her for a selfie and she reluctantly agrees to it. She basically pulls her in and we see her being really uncomfortable and she takes the selfie. This scene parallels what Apollo originally did. The girl is actually kind of similar in a way, like she's painted with similar colors than Apollo. She's kind of more like on a violet grayish side, but it clearly alludes to this scene with Apollo. And I think this is a perfect moment to talk about Apollo, and I'm talking about Apollo in Lore Olympus. Apollo is introduced very early in the story. He's introduced as this douchebag, he's talking with Hermes, and I don't think a lot of people talk about how Hermes in the original Lore Olympus was kind of enabling Apollo's annoying and shitty behavior, at least at the beginning. When we first meet both of them, one of the line of the dialogue is Hermes telling Apollo that he thought Artemis is not allowing men in her house, and Apollo is all like a bit smirky and he's all like, oh yeah, you know, she's a bit distracted today, so I guess. And not once Hermes is raising any objections, he's like on board with it and that, so it's a bit, you know, I wouldn't say it's like super duper evil on his side or anything like that, but it is a bit, I don't know. Anyways, as soon as Apollo sees Persephone in the original Lore Olympus, he is absolutely enamored by her beauty, as everybody else, because she's the most beautiful and the most amazing person in the whole Olympus, as we know, right? So he sees her and he's all like, Hermes, why didn't you tell me that this chick is hot? I mean, like, come on. And he jumps out of the car asking Hermes to stay in it, and he essentially poses near his car. He's standing next to his golden chariot and he's all like cool and trying to be all like casual and that. We have seen Lore Rekindled recreating this scene when he pulled up in front of Cory's house to give her unexpected lift. I think this is an effective portrayal of his character because it shows him as being this like flashy and a bit of a poser that he is. In Lore Olympus, Hermes jumps out of the car and runs to hug Cory, and of course Apollo is annoyed that he ruined the perfect entrance as he's, you know, in his main character era. And as they drive to Artemis's house, and Cory is all like, you know, she's completely smitten with Hades, so she's all like, oh my god, he has all these books and he's like this amazing, he has dogs, wee, oh my god, have you seen, and he gave me this coat and blah 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 blah. And of course Apollo, being Apollo, he's like, oh my god, he's only doing that because he wants to get into your pants, right? And, you know, Hermes laughs as well, I guess, you know, it's funny to him. And one thing I wanted to mention about Persephone, and this is something that it really struck me while I was rereading it. Some people said that they weren't too fond of the new portrayal because the new Persephone had this bad bee vibe, while the previous one was kind of like this fish out of the water, and she was all like naive and trusting, and this was sort of like the character that she was portrayed as at the beginning of the story, and they were missing that element because it was part of her character. Honestly, if it was only the case of like the original character being more like naive and that, I wouldn't mind that she would stay this way. But I feel like the original Persephone, at least for me, because, you know, we're allowed to disagree, it's absolutely fine. She was kind of like, I mean, she was freaking childish, man. Even reading these bits in the story, and mind you, these are sort of the first chapters we get. And this comes straight after we get hammered over the head with the fact that Persephone is young and won't argue with Hades. That was said by Hera in the previous scene in the nightclub while brothers were having lunch and perving over Persephone. Apollo laughs at her and he's all like, oh yeah, he's definitely trying to get with you. And she's all like, that's not true. he's my friend. And he's all like, oh no, I'm just like being realistic. And, Hermes jumps in and he's all like, I know, but she's a kid. Go easy. I mean, the amount of times that in this chapter Persephone is referred to or treated as a kid is just bizarre, man. Then we see her like entering the room as she cuts her hand while cooking, and she's all like this tiny figure in a doorway. And Artemis, that just finished telling Apollo for, annoying her friend, is all like, oh yeah, Percy, what's the matter? And she's like, oh my god. And she's crying, right? And she's like, I slept with the knife. This is 18-year-old, right? I mean, what the freak? I understand that she maybe got frightened by the situation, but man, this is just such a weird depiction of somebody, cutting his hand, somebody immortal, mind you, cutting his hand with a knife a bit, and instead of like wrapping it, she's kind of holding some towel over it, like she doesn't even know what to do with it, and she's supposed to be this like smart person, and she's like, there's a lot of blood, and she's all like crying and sparkling at the same time. And maybe her blood is sparkling because, the blood is golden and everything. And Artemis runs to get some band-aids, and she leaves Apollo with Persephone. And then again, she's portrayed as this tiniest figure, and he's all like, this big figure in front of her. And he literally picks her up and puts her on the counter, and she's all like, hey, stop that, no. And she then says that because he gives her a lecture about like, oh yeah, I'm sorry that I was being harsh with this Hades thing, but I'm only, looking out for you and that. And she's all like, I know that I'm relatively young in comparison to everyone else, but I still have to be responsible for myself. I shouldn't have to be watched. I mean, the amount of time that this story spends talking about the fact that other people treat Persephone as a child is just really, really, really excessive in this chapter. Later on, we have Hermes entering the scene, and he's all like, hey kids, I hope I'm not interrupting. And then Hermes is like, blink twice if you're in trouble, and it's used as this like comic relief moment as Hermes is aware apparently of Persephone being uncomfortable around Apollo. And this is a scene that parallels the one that I just discussed, the one in Lore Rekindled, where Fan is kind of like grabbing her and pulling her in and forcing her to do a photo that she's clearly not comfortable with. But then here, of course, it's Apollo, he's taking that picture, he's posting it online, so, everybody knows of his association with Persephone. Persephone carries on being innocent / childish, and she's all like, why does my chest hurt? I mean, girl, you're 18. You're already hooked up with Ares, and you don't know what it means to be in love. She's all like, honestly, she's all like oblivious. I mean, I get that. She's 19. Like, but do you have to hammer us over the head with the fact that she is not only perceived as a child, but also extremely childish and portrayed in an extreme childish way? It just feels a bit off to me. I don't know if am I over-exaggerating? Are we saying the same thing? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. But on a side note, I also forgot how early in a story Apollo was introduced, and also how early the whole essay happened, which wasn't handled, in my opinion, in the best way possible. And it's just crazy how the whole relationship between Hades and Persephone is essentially developed from that point. And him having a conversation with her on the phone and providing a distraction, I guess, to this traumatic experience is used as some sort of like a trampoline that is supposed to bounce the relationship off to a new direction, I guess. I like in the original scene with Apollo where she's essentially manhandled and used as an object. In here is very similar, but it's by the schoolmates rather than Apollo. And she comes back home, she, talks to the cat. I think in the original she also did talk to the cat. Then she finds a note from Artemis that specifically says not to feed the cat because the cat is on a diet. So there's this like funny scene where Persephone is all like, Retsina, no! But Artemis also mentions to her that she did sort her some place in the cupboard. And as Persephone opens the cupboard, she notices her face, her own face, on the box of cereal, and she's all like, oh god. And she slams the cupboard door. We can conclude that she's a bit sick and tired of that Barley mascot role. And we get to my favorite scene. Oh my god. I'm sorry I snorted, but man, this is so good. So I think I mentioned in one of my previous videos that Lore Rekindled takes little like jabs at Lore Olympus from time to time. And it's really, really hilarious. So do you remember that famous scene in Lore Olympus where there was this nymph that was trying to get on with Hades and Persephone trashed her apartment? That's the scene. And it's just so hilarious. Like, I love the art style. Like, it literally resembles, especially Hades. He does look like Hades. This is Hades. I mean, come on. Essentially, Persephone in the TV says that, husband, I was the one who trashed her apartment. I did it all for you, for us. And he replies with, I know, dear wife. That's why I'm going to make love to you right here in this office. And Persephone, and I'm talking about Lore Rekindled Persephone, she makes a comment that, oh my god, the reviews for this season were not kidding, like they really stopped caring, and it's just, oh my god, yes. Kudos to Lore Rekindled for bringing the joy back to us. And then she says, oh, at least it isn't too distracting, like she has a ton of things to do. And then we see her commercial coming on the TV, the Barley Mother commercial, and she's all like, oh my god. So we see that she is clearly unhappy and annoyed with the whole Barley Mother thing, which I think is perfectly understandable. She wanted to blend in, she wanted to do something different, she wanted to start a new chapter in her life, and her past is kind of like dragging her back, if you know what I mean. We get this cute art. I mean, I'm just loving this picture. Persephone is kind of like trying to read her notes while the cat is washing herself. She, you know, is having a little lick, which gets interrupted by yet another commercial, but this time from Underworld Corp. They are announcing they are looking for an intern, and Persephone's attention is quickly grabbed by Hades in the commercial, and as she's looking at her phone, we understand that she is considering applying. So this is very different than in Lore Olympus. One of the arguments I had for the original story was the fact that Persephone had virtually no agency. Everything that was happening to her was the decisions from other characters. In here, I really like the fact that decision making is on her side. So in the original, Hera essentially pushed Persephone in arms of Hades, using the internship as a tool to get them together because she wanted to test them whether they are compatible in marriage, which doesn't make much sense because at the beginning she was clearly annoyed with the relationship. And so we have to remember that despite the various changes that were happening in the story, first making Demeter and Hera sisters, then they were made friends, and they were kind of reverted back to being sisters again, which was a whole lot of mess. But anyways, even if it was her friend's daughter or her sister's daughter, clearly she had the right to have reservations against the relationship. And it was this weird jump in the original story where she was first against it, and then she had a quick chat with Zeus that wasn't a productive chat. They were like having an argument, and then for whatever reason after that chat she just completely switched her mind when it comes to Hades and Persephone and decided to play a matchmaker, I guess. Then we are back into the nightmare. She's kind of having a discussion with the voice, so we see that there are those two sides to her. I'm just really interested what the other side is. I really hope it's not, you know, just some boogeyman sitting in her closet, like taking over her body from time to time, even though it is established so far that she has like this loss of memory. But I really hope it's going to be more like, okay, so she doesn't know that side of her and she needs to find a link between these two sides of her, the maiden and the bringer of death, so she can be a more realized person as a whole, rather than it being all like, okay, so you're a sleeping beauty and evil queen cursed you with something that you have no control over, and of course it's not your fault. Persephone wakes up abruptly and we see the hair going crazy again, which is a cool addition. I hope they keep it consistent because in Lore Olympus it kind of went away. She goes to take a shower, she cuts her hair, and then we see her having breakfast with Artemis, and Artemis is the queen of a dry joke. I absolutely love her character in it. And she says, oh, you're okay? Playing with your food is only, fun when it's alive. So this is another bow to her being a goddess of hunt. And I absolutely love these tiny additions. It really makes them come across as the Olympic gods that they are based on. Persephone explains that she feels a bit weird at the university because people are treating her very differently and they can't seem to be able to let it go. Apollo asks her whether it's because she's a Barley Mother mascot or it's because she's a goddess, and adds that it's probably because people are wondering what is she doing at school and why is she wasting time with it. Artemis, being his sister, asks him to zip it, but he continues on and he says that she has all the resources she needs to make a go of it at Olympus, and she chooses to go to university. What is the point of her learning about the world that she helped to create? Artemis, in the meantime, in the background, is like defending her and being like, hey, it's never too late to learn, and like, except for you, like, that ship sailed ages ago. Come on, the defender of young women in her. But Persephone is okay with the conversation. She essentially says that there's always more and she's trying to achieve it for school. This is something that she needs to do for herself as she wants to develop herself as a person. She does mention though that it comes with some problems, and we see from Artemis' side that she prefers it in the mortal realm and swiftly leaves the scene to get there because she works there as in the original. And then Persephone is kind of like standing up. She wants to go. We see that she's mildly annoyed with Apollo and his whole tirade regarding her wasting her time and that. And he asks her to wait. And he kind of sort of apologizes. He doesn't really apologize per se, but he mentions that what he said came out wrong and she should be doing what she wants to do, and he's fully on board with that and he's not gonna stop her. Like, he wants to be a supportive boyfriend. He still mentions that he personally doesn't get it, but he wants to be on her side. She kind of accepts that and, they kiss. He takes her to class and while leaving the house, kicks a bunch of magazines. That includes the very magazine that has Persephone with Hades on the cover, and Persephone leaves for uni without knowing that she's now a part of a controversy. I really like the portrayal of Apollo in Lore Rekindled because he's a very nuanced character. On one hand, we see a bit of his controlling behavior and he's very opinionated, but on the other hand, he has enough loveliness towards Persephone that we are willing to give him the benefit of a doubt. He's kind of like muddying the waters. He isn't fully abusive or anything. He's kind of like a bit concerning because we see these little bits of him, but it is very balanced. So it makes sense while Persephone still stays with him, and I believe that this is going to be escalated and it's going to lead to some very interesting conflict in the future. Then we cut to the scene with Hades in the Underworld, and this is a scene made solely for comic relief and it's absolutely awesome. It's really, really cool. We see a Viking entering the Underworld and Hades is like, what the hell are you doing here? And Cassia, I'm gonna need you to refile a struggler. Yeah, it's a Viking this time. So we know that there are some like parallel mythological realms, I guess, that the different mortals go to when they pass. So it's a really, really interesting concept. We then shift to Hades and Minthe. They are having a bit of a discussion about what happened and Hecate interrupts them and she is having a big go at Hades. In Lore Olympus, the aggro was about three things. On the first note, it was about the whole tabloid picture. On the second note, it was about the fact that it was Demeter's daughter that was the subject of the scandal, and Hecate was close with Demeter. And on the third note, it was about the fact that Persephone was 19. And this is the scene in Lore Olympus where Hades finds out that Persephone is indeed a teenager. It doesn't stop him from pursuing her, but initially he has a bit of an ick, I guess, about it. In Lore Rekindled, the whole aggro is about those two things, about the tabloid picture and Hades not being careful enough not to be a subject of a scandal as a boss, as a CEO. And on the other hand, it's about the fact that it is Demeter's daughter. Hades realizes he messed up and we see a very juicy scene with him kind of unleashing his dark persona. We see him like turning into this starry presence. We see him visually, getting really angry at the fact that You know, he wasn't able to protect her from the scandal. Hecate keeps grilling him, and he explains that it was only an accident and he never meant for her to be at his place or leaving his place. And Hecate is like, how do you expect anybody to believe that? And Hecate is really, really cool in this scene. I don't remember about the original, but I vaguely sort of remember that she also had this thing. But in here, 2 additional heads pop out of her neck, and all of the 3 heads are having a go at Hades. He's all like one voice at a time because he can't like understand all of the heads while they're simultaneously talking. He's all like, oh, no, it can't be that bad, right? Like, she's pretty afraid there, right? And Hecate is like, you dumbass. I mean, she uses different words, but anyways, she's like, she's the Barley Mother's mascot. And he runs as he's running for his life and gets into the cupboard, pulls cereal out of the cupboard, and he indeed sees Persephone's face on it. And he realizes that he did indeed messed up big time. And as a cherry on the top, Minthe enters the scene asking why the girl is wearing her coat. Because it's obviously her coat. She's with Hades, it's a limited edition coat, adds 2 things together, like that's the coat. Minthe is not having it, she's having a big go at him. Who is she? What was she doing with you? He's all like, babe, that's not like that, it's not what you think. She is very, very angry, and he makes the situation 1,000 times worse by saying that, hey now, she's not a floozy, she's the Barley Mother mascot. And she's all like, I don't give a damn who she is. What is wrong with you? And she is throwing a packet of cereals at his face. It is very interesting in here because in the original, Hecate was the one who slapped him. She essentially slapped Hades and said that she was never as disappointed in him as in that moment. And Persephone is only 19. What was he thinking? He's gonna ruin her reputation and all of this stuff, right? And then we seen Minthe being portrayed as an abuser and she slaps him, and there's this whole big thing that is made out of that slap, that she's abusive and, you know, she slaps him around and all of this stuff. Well, Hecate is essentially doing the same thing, but it doesn't have that same commentary attached to it. It's a bit like Hecate is slapping, but Hecate good, so it's good, but Minthe is slapping, but Minthe bad, so bad. In here, Hecate doesn't slap him, so she's not shown to be violent towards him, but Minthe is kind of borderline shown to be violent towards him. And it is kind of important to mention that comic book as a medium is very well known for exaggerated depictions of certain things. So not always where characters are violent against each other is per se violence. Sometimes it's kind of like a metaphor of them having a banter, especially like in anime, we see that a lot. So in here it could be just like the over-exaggerated thing to just kind of like have a comic relief because of what Hades said. But it could be also, as I mentioned, hinting at Minthe being kind of portrayed as in the Lore Olympus as a person who was quite abusive. He argues back and he says that she would be in the photo if she hadn't ghosted him, and she's not having it. She accuses him of trying to turn the tables around and put it on her, and he's all like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. And she's all like, wait, so this is my fault now, and this and that. They clearly have issues with communication. In the meantime, Persephone is at her uni, she's watching the clock, and she again sees people gossiping about her, so she automatically assumes it's because of the fact that she's a Barley Mother mascot, and she's all like, yeah, I can hear you, like everybody knows I'm the Barley Mother girl, like just get over it, because she's so fed up with people like talking about her. So she clearly is at her wit's end, and they all like, what are you saying? We're talking about the tabloid, right? That is you're all over it. She checks it out and she's like, oh no, that can't be happening. Why is this happening? And she tries to reason with herself. So she's like, no, it's fine. It's just a gossip. Don't worry about it. But then somebody shouts like, hey, Pinky, you're working the graves now. Which is like, oh, what the freak. She goes back home. Artemis is blissfully unaware and asks her how her day was. She's all like, I'm going to bed. She enters her bedroom, locks herself in, and she just gets her emotions out. She screams to the pillow, and we see her hair going crazy again. as it does when she's distressed. She blames Hades and she's all like, if you hadn't taken my shoes, like, I would never end up like this. Then her mind shifts and she starts blaming herself and she's like, oh, if only I didn't go to that party, like he didn't do it on purpose. And she wants to talk to him. She tries to find his business card, but before she manages to contact him, all of a sudden there is a knock on the door. Artemis comes in and she's all like, hey, you gotta come downstairs, like Hestia's here. Then Hestia enters the picture, and I gotta say that I really like this depiction of Hestia. Hestia in mythology is a goddess of the sacred fire of the hearth, which was a symbol of domesticity. So she was essentially like a goddess of household. And in Lore Olympus, she was depicted to be kind of like a hypocrite. She was a part of the goddesses of eternal maidenhood, but she was in a secret relationship herself. That she was hiding from all of the rest of the goddesses, pretty content with them keeping their vows of celibacy while she was not doing the same thing. And she's portrayed to be quite harsh at times. She is pretty judgmental as well, like she comments on Hera's smoking, for example, and I remember that scene when she discovered the tabloid picture, and this is the scene that was equivalent to the scene I'm about to describe in Lore Rekindled, in which she screamed at Persephone and confiscated the code from her. So she literally took the code from Persephone because reasons. And in Lore Rekindled, Hestia is a much more peaceful presence. She has this particular way of speaking, a very calm demeanor, and she's very good with words, which matches her attributes, matches this character, because she's the one who is supposed to keep balance at household. So essentially this is what she is doing in that scene. She's trying to get to what happened. There is a conversation between herself, Persephone, and Artemis, in which both Hestia and Artemis are in their element. Artemis is like, what did he do to you? If he laid a hand on you, I swear I'm gonna... Hestia is all like, Artemis, it's okay. We're focusing on Cory right now. I'm not angry. I'm just confused. Just explain what happened and everything. Cory explains the situation. She tells the truth. He was holding on to her shoes. She noticed the shoes and then she passed out in the car, so she comes clean. And Hestia is asking which party. Artemis is owning up to her part, that she took Persephone to the party. Hestia is like, yeah, it all starts to make sense now, but that's not how tabloids are gonna sell it, so we need to work out some damage control. She's asking Persephone if it was the only time they met. She confirms that. She asks about the code, and Persephone admits that she still has it. And Hestia, instead of just nicking it and taking it away or confiscating it, she instead just advises her to get rid of it because it's not a great look in this particular situation for her to keep the code. Then Hestia heads home, and before she leaves, she lays a boundary for Cory. She tells her that her loyalty is to Demeter and the goddesses of eternal maidenhood. So what Cory does is essentially her responsibility, and the consequences are for her to bear. Persephone understands that. She apologizes for all the inconvenience and all of that. Hestia also gives advice to Artemis, advising her against going to Zeus's parties and saying that Zeus is indeed her creator. So we know that, unlike in Lore Olympus, in here, cards are on the table. We know that Zeus was involved in the creation of Apollo and Artemis, but he's not assuming a role of her father. We see that Hestia is a calm and understanding presence, but she can also be quite stern. The goddesses instantly respect what she says, and they all like, yes, sorry, and we see them both being a bit flustered. So we know that Hestia commands that respect. She leaves the house, and then we get the scene between Artemis and Persephone, where Artemis confronts her about lying, and Persephone comes clean with her. Artemis expresses her concerns regarding Hades. She doesn't want Cory to be involved with him. She doesn't want them to pursue the relationship because he apparently has a reputation. Cory tries to tell her that, he was actually really nice, but she's all like, it's easy to be nice. That doesn't mean he's good. And she says she wouldn't be able to handle the guilt if something happened to Cory, especially at hands of Hades. So this is that protector in her again that really shines through this character, and I absolutely love it. And then we switch to Hades, reading the article and getting increasingly mad. This is a good moment to conclude this video. If you're interested in further analysis of Lore Rekindled versus Lore Olympus, please stay tuned as I'm planning to release more of these. Thank you so much for watching, thank you so much for subscribing. I wish you a very, very lovely week and I'll speak to you later. Bye!